Beautiful words, guys. Beautiful words. And you know what? For the audience here, let's back it up a little bit and get some of the history of you two and where you came from and the accomplishments. And I just love hearing these stories because I know a lot of them, but there's probably so many I don't know. So how did you two get together? Where did that all begin?
Well, it began nearly 30 years ago on April 1st, 1993 in Eugene, Oregon. And I was only 19 and I'm now turning 50. So it's like being, in a whole entire lifetime with someone, my love.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was a little bit older, so I was like, oh, Jesus.
She was a whole 3 older. So it was like a whole, different generation, let's say. And, but not really. And so we just had this beautiful, it was from river rafting and the love of outdoors that really brought us together. My roommate took a river rafting class, and Kelly.
It definitely was a love of cannabis that brought us together too. I feel like cannabis brings together a lot of people from all over the world. And I believe that, at that time, that's how I was making a living, as I was doing great bed shows and I was swinging bags of weed, the kind bud back in the 80s. Back in the 90s. That was all,
before names.
Awesome. It was before all of the names.
Kind bud.
It was
green
called
bud
kind bud
as opposed to brick bud. But everyone knows that. But
it really was
that's
the blueberry.
What we were doing,
it was the original blueberry. So
or skunk. We had purple kush, skunk. The blueberries were the few strains that we had at the time.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're going on 30 years together, and we've had a whole life of growing a lot of gardens. Josh and I, from the very minute that we've been together, we started growing gardens. And, now I know that we're growing soil. So we've been creating soil and growing soil for a very long time, putting plants in it. And yeah.
We met in 93, and then in 94, Kelly graduated university, and we drove in a Volkswagen bus to Costa Rica and back in 1994. We went from a Grateful Dead show in Seattle and drove all the way through Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and into Costa Rica, and then back. And it was very impressionable to us because we spent a month in Guatemala and we really were in awe of the terrace gardening and farming that was happening in Guatemala and the type of farming that was going on any type of hillside. We're like, wow, that's not only beautiful, it makes a lot of sense. You're just holding the biology and not just letting it strip down the mountain, and there was so much. We even noticed the big banana plantations and saw what United Fruit had done, and those type of corporate farming situations that happened all through Central America were also very impressionable on us at the time. And of course, the war and the Sandinistas and the Chiapas and all of the Zapatistas in Chiapas, like that was impressionable too. When we came back to Eugene, we were living with a person who was one of the main psychedelic mushroom farmers of Oregon, underground, of course, because we're talking about 1994. But our first gardens were learning composting, for not only outdoor gardens, but for indoor mushroom cultivation. Also, Oregon Tilth was just starting in Eugene in the mid 90s, and organic farming, the Organic Farming Act of 1990 from California was also an impressionable time in Eugene at the time. We had the organic thing of 1990 in California, and then Oregon Tilth came out. So there was a lot of consciousness around just organic food cultivation, soil building, compost teas. Back in those days, Elaine Ingham was working as a teacher at Oregon State University, and we had a lot of mentors that were her colleagues at the time that we were all part of this organic food movement. Of course, also weed and everything else, because we're just alternative family and we're dedicated for life to the underground and to alternative therapies, because we just don't believe in what's been given us to us. So that was like our alternative. We're going to do something different than what the system has given us. And at the time in Eugene, it was very progressive. extremely progressive, and it laid a very large impression on us through midwifery, mycology, herbalism, and organic farming. That's our roots. That it's Grateful Dead, psychedelics. That it formed us to say, this is our life path forever. Never stray, no chemicals, natural only. And I think we're still embodying that today.
Well, and I just wanted to say too is that I grew up gardening in Virginia. I grew up on farms. I grew up on a really big piece of land, and it was always my job as a very youthful, maybe 4 or 5, to take care of the garden and to go bring the compost out to the garden. And at that time, I was just digging little holes in the garden and putting the food compost in it. And we had horses at the time, and we were utilizing all of the manure. So really, I feel like I've always been gardening and always been doing things in the soil because it just makes me feel good. And it's so wonderful to put a seed in and be able to harvest something that you can actually use. And it's incredible.
Yeah, books like Mycelium Running wasn't even written yet. You know, it was just growing and cultivating mushrooms by Paul Stamets. And we were seeing, you know, country fair spoken word talks about, you know, this new like awareness around mycelium and nutrient exchange and mycorrhizal fungi. So our first product was a mycorrhizal fungi product.